afternoon. Thank you very much for being here with us today. This is my channel, Escucha Vital, or Vital Listening in English. And I like to introduce today Dr. Daniel Foor, who is and was my teacher in Ancestral Medicine practice, which is a ritual practice that is really something that makes me very passionate. And I would like Daniel to invite him to introduce himself because I think he can do it best. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for the invitation to share a bit. Sure, I can say a little bit about myself. My name is Daniel, and I was born and raised in the United States. My lineage ancestors are early German and English settler colonialists to North America. And so my people ancestrally have been living in what's now the United States for at least 5-7 generations. And I live now with my wife and two daughters, young daughters in Andalusia and near Granada in Spain. And we moved here last year. And I am the founder and director at Ancestral Medicine, and that's a business and what has become of my personal practice. It's now an organization focused on animism, earth reconnection, ancestral healing, and being an inclusive international platform for teaching ritual arts and earth reconnection. And as for my own background a bit, I professionally I'm a doctor of psychology. I have a PhD in psychology, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm no longer practicing with my license, but I've trained as a therapist. And I'm a student of religion, of history, of culture, and I mostly am a ritualist. And so I've really focused on studies of religion, spirituality, applied ritual arts as they relate to healing and cultural change. So I guess the last thing about my own background is that I wasn't raised with any framework to relate with the earth, the ancestors, any of that. But I had the good fortune early in life to encounter teachings and living teachers from whom I could learn. And so I'm now 45, and I've been basically 30 years of conscious, active involvement in study of ritual, spirituality, and all that. So it continues to be a source of real nourishment and delight, and it's become a job too.
Yes, I can relate to what you're saying, that maybe someone who is not raised by any framework of rituals or religion can also be drawn to this practice.
Yeah.
From your perspective, why is it so important to have some ritual practice in our life?
Well, I think the even more important thing is to consciously relate with the rest of life, and to recognize that living humans, we're just one lovely, dangerous, complicated kind of person in the big world. There are also the dead, the ancestors. There are also the other than humans, the big spirits of the mountains and rivers and plants and animals, the deities, God directly, the old powers that hold up the universe, the earth, the stars and sun. And the world is animate, is relational, is responsive. And our ancestors knew that up until very recently, and some lineages have longer histories of amnesia than others. But for the vast majority of our history as a species, we humans have recognized that we're in a relational world, a responsive world. And the consequences of forgetting that are really steep. We're in a time in 2023 here of deepening ecological catastrophe. It's really, we could say so many things about that, but it's very sad and also very urgent that we make some changes, and like big changes. And we could adjust the systems and all that, and may we do that urgently. But the lasting change comes from a change of perspective, which is to reclaim the understanding that we are just one kind of person in a big web of other kinds of people. And that calls for ethical, moral accountability to those other people. So we need to change how we live. Yeah.
It also, excuse me, it's like a call to change our pattern of thoughts. because present society imprints us in a way to think and behave like normal, like Dr. Gabor Mate says. And he also says in his Wisdom of Trauma documentary that we say Mother Earth and look at how we're treating our mother. Like there is no relationship between us. And including all those very difficult life experiences that one can live in this earthly life. I also share the belief that it has an utmost importance to relate to all those things that surround us. And individuality, if we seek different religions, it's like a myth in itself. No? Like also Thich Nhat Hanh says that we are interbeing, we are interconnected with everything. We can't even look at a sheet of paper or take a piece of bread without getting connected to all those persons who have created this object or this food or all those elements that actually can be found in it, the sun, the rain. So I think it is really necessary to expand our consciousness to the relational field, because also when we speak about different traumas, it's usually a rupture in our relationships or something that happens with us that creates a response in our bodies, in our nervous system, that separates us from the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's true. I know as a white PhD American about individualism. I've been conditioned into that. It's been really part of what I've received culturally and what the world has reflected back to me around achievement and implicit supremacy kind of thinking. And so I agree that it's very toxic to see ourselves as extremely separate from the rest of life. Now, it's important to recognize that we each do have a kind of unique energy or destiny or soul configuration, and that can inform what we bring to the world, what we bring to community. But it ultimately is important to live in relationship. And in that way, to circle back to your question about ritual, for those drawn to ritual and spirituality and religion and all that, it's great. I mean, there's a lot of richness there to be had. And often the rituals are about tending to the relationships. Yes. About tending to the relationships, sometimes with other living humans. There are many kinds of rituals that are about caring for other human relationships. Rituals of forgiveness or atonement, rituals of celebration, honoring rites of passage, etc. And there are also rituals which are about communicating and honoring the gift of the bodies of the plants and the animals that we eat, of honoring the sun and the earth and the elements directly, etc. But in a sense, the ritual is a means to facilitate relationship and to work with intent and to regulate energy and all that. So I happen to be a ritualist, so I love it, but it's important to say that it's not going to be everybody's calling. The most important thing is a relational stance and ethical ways of being in the world, including with the way that our systems are held, so that the necessary push for justice, for fairness, includes also our relationship with the earth, with the land, with places, etc.
And includes the relationship with all those who have passed away, who are not incarnated, because they're also part of the earth. You know, when we go to the cemeteries, we connect deeply with all those who we loved and are not among us. Except, and this is a curious comment that I just passed a few days in the Arctic, close to Spitsbergen, and in one island in Svalbard, in Norwegia, it's prohibited to die, basically, because the earth is permafrost. So all those bodies who are in the small cemetery, maybe since 120 years ago, the bodies haven't decomposed. So that's really interesting how when we change our settings in the earth, in the globe, even all these cultural heritage changes. in a way. So it's really curious for me. And I call it cultural heritage because I know that there are very different ways in each culture how we relate to all those who have passed away. There are, I think, in every culture, every mythology, every code of conduct that we have from our tribes, original tribes or settlements, it was a very important way. And somehow in this past 100, 200, 300 years, it mostly diminished. And I'm really curious, Daniel, how did you come to relate with your ancestors, and why ancestral medicine? Because it says medicine is something that is good for us.
Yeah. As a teenager, I was fortunate to encounter the combination of books on ritual and shamanism combined with experience with psychoactive substances. And so the experience with LSD, cannabis, things like that when I was younger, it wasn't just opening and like, wow, there were things I wasn't equipped to navigate culturally. But I also had the sense in some of those experiences of actual contact with forces or powers or spirits that were not me, clearly smart and interesting, not always safe, but I didn't have a framework to even think or talk about those ones. And the teachings on shamanism, my own ancestral traditions have revived paganism from Northern Western Europe, and then the larger body of spirituality on earth, all I realized did speak to those matters. And so that it was very motivating for me to fill in the cultural gaps from what I wasn't shown. And the psychology training helped me to do that in a way that's more grounded emotionally and relationally. But I've been in a sense healing or reparenting myself from the wounds of colonialism, of extreme materialism or individualism, racism in the United States, by doing my own reconnection work, and then also supporting others through that, and realizing there's nothing so special about the ways that I was born into disconnection. It's a larger cultural disconnection. And so through my own healing, I'm then more equipped to support others in that process. But specifically around the work with blood lineage ancestors, my first teachers in shamanic practice in the late 90s in Ohio in the United States encouraged me to connect with my ancestors. And I hadn't seen that as a source of value. No one talked to me about that. But I did, and it was very potent and surprisingly helpful. I ended up that first day really of ritual partnering with older ancestral guides and teachers from my lineages to help in spirit my grandfather, who some years earlier had taken his own life, and to directly assist my grandfather, who I hadn't thought about much, through work with the spirits in this new to me exciting kind of shamanic ritual terrain, really started to connect the dots. And so I found my family as a source of curiosity and started to view them in a different way. I did a lot of research about our family history, and I really got to know my own lineage ancestors and all the complexity and disappointment and goodness and just mixture of things that's there. And a final thing is that process has been very helpful to me to be more culturally situated. There's a way in which, as a white American guy, I was sort of implicitly encouraged to think of myself as the normative person, as like just like a standard person, like a template for human being, as arrogant and crazy as that sounds. But that's the conditioning. And getting to know my own lineages, I'm like, oh, I'm just a regular sized person and born into a system that has issues. And seeing myself in the context of my lineages has helped me to know how to relate more in a more balanced way with people of other backgrounds in a more regular sized way. So it's also been very culturally reparative, restorative.
And that's a beautiful way to say this cultural repair, recognizing ourselves in the other in a way. and recognizing that we share a common ground in the earth, because everyone went through cultural and historical turbulences, which may not finish when we pass away. And this was one of the discoveries that really enlightened me, because before I met with your work, I didn't think about that there could be a difference between those who have passed away and those who we call like ancestors, like someone who is already bright and well and benevolent and would not show up in our lives with ghostly energies. So I really appreciate the framework you have created, Daniel, because it's something that facilitates greatly to connect with our ancestors in a very safe way. And for me, the core is this: how we can differentiate between those who are unwell, and why is it important to actually do a process of ancestralization. Can you speak a little bit about this, please?
Yeah, there are a lot of people doing some version of ancestral engagement or ancestral healing, both contemporary, newly received or inspired practices, and then traditions of tending that are just unbroken or still maintained to some degree. So the specific ancestral lineage healing method that I've developed or received or teach is intended to address places of disconnect. So it's a repair-oriented method. There are other applications, but that's the heart of the matter in a lot of ways. And what's distinct about it, one, is that there is a very strong emphasis on discerning between those among the dead who are really quite safe and healed and loving and kind and fine to relate with, and those who are anything other than that. And we hold a kind of high bar with that. And I don't personally, and I don't encourage others to relate directly with the dead who are troubled, but rather to assist them in a way that's safe for us to do that without a lot of direct contact. And so we ask the older healed ancestors to be the mediators or the ones who bring that about. And in that way, it's very overtly validating of the reality of the ancestors. They're not just a part of us. They're not just part of a general field of knowing. They're not a symbol. They're not just an abstract group force. They're as real as you and I. And they can change. And they can be in a troubled state and then have shift or healing. And that's desirable, it's helpful, it's important. A lot of those things are taken care of traditionally, either just through living an ethical life, but also at the time of death around the funeral rites and the group rituals to make sure that someone joins the ancestors. So when the culture becomes disconnected, so we're not thinking or tending to the ancestral relationships during life, and then additionally, the funeral rites aren't very effective always, then we get a backlog of folks who have died, but they're not very vibrant, they're not at peace, or they're actually acutely troubled. So then they fall back on the living, they become a source of interference, of illness, of mental, emotional turbulence, and we're living with ghosts in a really, not just a metaphorical way, but a very real way, physically. And so that discernment between the dead who are healed and those who are not, in a non-judgmental way, informs the very safety-oriented approach to this way of working with the ancestors. Another thing is that the emphasis really is on lineage and on seeing the individual ancestors, or parents, grandparents, siblings, great-grandparents, as part of a much larger lineage, as part of a collective, as part of a group energy. I don't personally do a lot of relating with individual ancestors. It's more a sense of relating with an overall lineage or group. That's certainly true in a lot of spiritual traditions. I think it's true with blood lineage ancestors as well. And I guess a final thing, and this is an interesting challenge for a lot of people who have a background in psychotherapy or mentoring or coaching or work where they're facilitating for the client. In this approach, the ancestors themselves are the ones who are carrying out the healing. Yeah. The practitioner is not like channeling. They're not saying, "Oh, Anna, your grandmother tells me to, say this to you." So you're not really intervening between the client and their own ancestors, for one. But even beyond that, there's a deep reliance on the healed and vibrant ancestors of the client. to bring the healing that's needed to those in the lineages of the client who still need that healing. And so in that way, we're really focused on the larger system that surrounds the client. And then secondarily, in many ways, the benefits tend to reverberate in the life of the client as the larger ancestral field around them becomes more healed up.
Yes, and this is another reassuring part of ancestral medicine or ancestral lineage healing, at least for me. I always had this consciousness of having like a backpack that I try to solve. I try to do something with it, and it was not possible. So I did a lot of things and it did not cease to exist. And when I started to work with ancestral lineage healing and connected with my different lineages, the first moment an ancestral guide, a healed, well, bright one, it just took me off the backpacks. It didn't exist anymore. So the most important message I would say was, you don't need to do anything, just let us do the work. And this is, I think it's being able to lean back to that fabric of connectedness, of belonging that is missing from our lives for many people.
It's a shocking and challenging growth edge sometimes for people training in the work. I say that because sometimes the way in which we are approaching healing is reinforcing the wound, is reinforcing the problem. There's a sense of, I need to fix this thing in myself rather than start from a stance of acceptance and curiosity. But also, I need to fix my lineages. I need to the implicit thing often is, if I can just heal this, then I can opt out of the relationship. I can extract myself from ancestral influence if I just heal it up. But that intent to the intent to disconnect from one's lineages is creates its own turbulence, because our connection with our ancestors is not optional.
No, we
structural. Yeah, exactly. The choice is to experience that consciously or unconsciously. If we believe we have disconnected from our ancestors and we're saying, I would like the unconscious choice, please. I don't want to think about it. I want to disconnect from it. So it's not inherently bad. It's just unconscious then.
Yes, yes. And in case if someone is an adoptee, I know that it can work. Can you speak to that, please? How does it work with blood ancestors or those who offer the family?
Yeah, in general, for anyone whose blood ancestors are not also family, whether they're raised by adoptive family, or also known just as family, or they're conceived through in vitro fertilization or other methods, whatever it might be, their blood family is maybe they're hazardous people, or maybe they're just never going to meet them, or they're orphaned, or whatever the circumstances might be. The sense in those cases are, in general, is that you have more than one set of ancestors. There are family ancestors, and then there are blood ancestors, and they maybe overlap a little or a lot. For most people, they overlap. Those are the same, but for a lot of people, they're distinct, or there's some overlap, and they're not quite the same. And how people navigate those different flavors of influence it's a little bit personal, but it's my encouragement and my view that it's still good to include blood lineage ancestors, that they have a certain kind of unshakable body level influence. That doesn't mean you're going to practice the traditions of your blood ancestors. It doesn't mean you ever need to open up to family if family is really harmful. There's a need to have a boundary with like biological kin. It doesn't mean you need to focus on that a lot, or that becomes your identity. But there's an unshakable influence from blood ancestry that's worth including in a cycle of healing. And beyond that, for sure, honor any in the larger human family that are important to you. Those might be family who are not related by blood. They could be people who are part of a chosen spiritual lineage, the ancestors of the place where you live, the ancestors who are cultural, like heroes or inspiration for you. There are many other kinds of ancestors than just blood ancestors. So that includes chosen or adoptive family. Those can all be important. Just don't skip the relevant influence of body level ancestors. They're worth including.
Yeah. And usually the body is like is an instrument to perceive what is happening in the field, as of my experience.
Yeah.
So there is a deepening in that relationship that can also allow blessings of healing to flow through our lives. So what, in your experience, because you're doing this particular practice since more than 20 years, 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. So in your experience, how can this practice affect a person's life? What is to expect when someone starts to work with this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to, in a way, it's hard to know because my whole adult life has been, or almost all of my adult life has been spent in some kind of conscious relationship with my ancestors. And so I don't have a different life to compare to. But that said, some of what I observe for me and for those I've supported over the years is that whatever challenges I might have in my life, I don't feel lonely. Even when I don't feel seen by the humans in my life, the living people that I want to feel seen by, my own ancestors can give me that gift of like, hey, we get you. We understand you. This is hard, no doubt, but we see you on a soul level. So that matters, to be really deeply seen. Also, there's an implicit accountability to it. Like, we see you and you can't hide from yourself. You can't hide from us. You can try, you can disconnect. We can't make you do anything, but because you're seen, we want to encourage you to be your full self. And in that way, the ancestors have always been a reminder about my destiny, what I'm here to do, and allies in that. Like, you don't have to do it alone, and you don't really have to do it. But if you don't step into your fullness, you're going to regret it later. You're going to have a conversation when you die, and it's not going to be comfortable. Yeah. So why don't you just like embrace who you are, and then let the details sort from there. So not feeling alone, clarity about path. They keep it spicy and interesting. Like I'm committed to growth and awakening and having a useful life of service above comfort. I happen to be fairly fortunate in my life, but I have felt, I guess, resourced enough or backed enough by them to make more courageous choices with my life. I think it's easier to take risks in service to growth when we feel supported. And they've helped me to feel supported. And that has included healing at times places of what we might call insecure attachment, or, so they've been a source of emotionally corrective experience or reparenting. And I if my dad, bless the man, isn't able to be the nurturing elder, sagely wizard that I might hope for from a father in my 40s, my ancestors can bring that. And I don't have to, my biological dad, may he be well, doesn't have the pressure to be all those things. So it's taken the pressure off of my living family to be all the things, which has improved our relationship because I can just accept them more for who they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, they have an interesting, meaningful life. And even when I'm doubting it, there are moments where I feel like they are reassuring and providing a way through the difficult patches. So that's made a huge difference.
Yes, I think so. And I remember that one day we were still in the training. You asked someone how did this practice improved or not their lives, or how they are doing in their own lives, because there were some doubts they're facing. And this person answered that, well, generally, I feel okay, much better. And I'm still sticking with that. And I use it a lot, because if whatever we practice is not improving our life, maybe we can look for a change. Maybe it can be something different. But I also would like to present your book, which is in English, is Ancestral Medicine. It is also in Spanish, Medicina Ancestral. And it will come in Hungarian as well, very soon. Az ősök gyógyító ereje. This is going to be the title in Hungarian. And I think it's also available in Polish.
It's also available in Polish, Croatian, Dutch, French, Chinese, and soon Turkish, Greek, and Romanian.
Wow, beautiful. So I hope that this conscious relating practice will really benefit everyone who is reading about it or comes to ancestralmedicine.org looking for the courses that are offered, where they can also meet you in the weekly calls.
The other thing that's in my mind that I was going to add is on that very last question you asked about how it's helped is, I've studied a lot about enlightenment or non-duality or awakening or different mystical traditions and all that. And it's easy as someone who isn't born into I'm born into a lineage of Lutheran farmers and settler colonialists, coal miners, and working class European immigrants to North America. It's not the most recently mystical lineage on earth, bless them. And there's goodness there, and there's mysticism in the older layers of the lineage, but not the recent ones so much. And working with the ancestors has helped me to understand the quality of awakening, or really the most realized aspects of human experience can also be found in my own lineages. And that's good it's good for cultural low self-esteem. It's good for people who come from cultural backgrounds where they don't see a lot of beauty in their recent ancestors, and to recognize that, no, we actually each are down lineage from very awake, ethical people of presence, even if it's been a minute since we, that's been transmitted. So that's been helpful because it's about finding your purpose, your medicine, your path in your specific context. You don't have to become somebody else.
Yeah. And if we can be and are invited to be our own selves, maybe this is really the blessing that we can offer to everyone. And in the beginning, Danielle, you mentioned that you have 2 daughters. And I'm really curious, how is it for you being in conscious relationship with all those who have come before you, and how does this show up or impact your fathering?
Yeah, well, they're almost 6 and 3, and they're doing great, fortunately. And in a way, I see them as ancestors returned. And so changing diapers, doing bedtime, dealing with tantrums, and, all the things that just go with even healthy kids in a demanding way, that I see it as a kind of ancestor reverence. And I trust that the spirits understand that it means I have less time to hang out with them and do a lot of ritual, because I'm often underwater with parenting. But for both Sarah, my wife, and I, we have done a lot of the lineage tending. And so I do think it has encouraged a sense of health in them from the very start of life. I don't say that to suggest that people who have children with different needs have somehow done anything wrong. It's only that if one does deep healing with one's lineages and the ones returning, our ancestors returning, I do think it supports the prayer of healthy ones returning. And, they help me to be patient and to understand that the demands of raising children are nothing new. It's just part of the human experience. So there's what is it to parent with the ancestors and let them, through me, hold the kids, and to see that they're big souls. There's not child souls, just like souls born into small bodies that don't have their brains fully developed yet, and so they're less regulated. But so seeing them in that way is good too. It helps, I think, them to feel like they're being raised in a respectful environment, where we can see them as big souls in small, somewhat dysregulated bodies.
Mm.
And yeah, I wouldn't trade it. Parenting is demanding, but it's a delight, and I do see it as part of the larger practice, even though it's hard sometimes, because I want to be writing a second book, I want to be doing this and that, and it doesn't work to write a book about ancestral reconnection and to be a bad father to do that. There's a disconnect, and so the public teaching will happen at the rhythm it needs to.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And it's a beautiful way of understanding that being present, being with those who need you, and are learning from your presence and reverence as children, they are also the future ancestors for the future generations. And they are also, as you said, ancestors returning.
Yeah, like that.
Thank you, Daniel, for all that you shared. And I know that there are some new in-person events that also will be happening later this year or the next year to come. So I would like to invite everyone to just have a look here in ancestralmedicine.org and peek around. Maybe you find something that is good for you. And thank you for offering your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.